The gunshot that shattered the front window sent Katherine Jenkins diving through the loose floorboard near the pantry, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might give her away. Above her head, heavy boots thundered across the wooden planks, voices shouting threats that made her blood run cold as she pressed herself into the crawlspace beneath her family's modest house on the outskirts of Johnson City, Texas. It was June of 1882, and Katherine had been preparing supper when the Riley gang rode into town looking for her brother Samuel, who had witnessed them rob the stagecoach 2 weeks prior. She was 21 years old, unmarried, and suddenly very much alone as the men tore through her home searching for evidence that might tie them to their crimes. Her parents had died the previous winter from pneumonia, leaving her and Samuel to manage the small ranch they had carved out of the harsh Texas landscape. Samuel had ridden to San Antonio 3 days ago to testify before a judge, and Katherine had foolishly believed she would be safe in his absence. The floorboards above her head groaned under the weight of someone heavy. Dust filtered down through the cracks, tickling her nose, and she fought desperately against the urge to sneeze. She could hear them ransacking the place, breaking her mother's china, overturning furniture, cursing when they found nothing. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps that she tried to muffle against her sleeve. "She has to be here somewhere," a rough voice growled. "The horse is still in the stable." "Maybe she ran into the brush," another replied. "Then go find her, you idiot. Boss wants anyone who might talk to that judge dealt with." Katherine squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her fist against her mouth to keep from crying out. The crawlspace smelled of earth and mildew, and something scurried past her leg in the darkness. She had never been so terrified in her entire life. These men would kill her without hesitation, just as they had killed the stagecoach driver and the guard riding shotgun. More footsteps. More cursing. She heard them go outside, heard them checking the barn and the chicken coop. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Her legs were cramping from being curled in such an awkward position, but she did not dare move. Even the smallest sound might give her away. Then she heard horses. Multiple horses approaching at a gallop. The sound of the Riley gang mounting up in a hurry, shouted warnings, and then gunfire, sharp and sudden, echoing across the property. Katherine flinched with each shot, pressing herself even flatter against the cold earth. The battle seemed to last forever, though it could not have been more than a few minutes. When silence finally fell, it was so complete that she wondered if everyone had killed each other. She waited, barely breathing, listening for any sound that might tell her what had happened. Her whole body was shaking now from fear and cold and the aftermath of adrenaline. She heard boots on the front porch, slow and measured. Someone entered the house, walking carefully through the wreckage the gang had left behind. "Hello," a male voice called out. It was deep and steady, with a slight drawl that marked him as a Texan born and bred. "Anyone here?" "The Riley gang is gone. You're safe now." Katherine did not move. It could be a trick. The gang might have sent someone who sounded trustworthy to flush her out. The footsteps moved through the house, pausing occasionally. "Madam, if you're hiding somewhere, you can come out. My name is Wesley Parker. I'm a deputy marshal out of Austin. I've been tracking the Riley gang for 3 months now. They're either dead or fled, but they're not coming back here today." A deputy marshal. Katherine's mind raced. Samuel had mentioned that federal marshals were involved in the case, that the stagecoach robbery had involved mail theft, making it a federal crime. But how could she be sure this man was who he claimed to be? "I know you're Katherine Jenkins," the voice continued. "Your brother Samuel is in San Antonio right now, safe and under protection. He sent word that his sister might be in danger. I came as fast as I could, but it looks like I was almost too late. I can see signs of a struggle here, but no body, which means you either got away or you're hiding real good." The mention of Samuel made Katherine's chest tighten. If this man knew her brother was in San Antonio, he probably was who he said he was. The Riley gang would not have known that detail. "There's a loose floorboard near the pantry," Wesley said, and Katherine's breath caught. "Looks like it's been pulled up recently." "Madam, if you're under there, I need you to come out so I can make sure you're not hurt. I promise you're safe now." Katherine swallowed hard. Her throat was dry as dust. "How do I know you're really a marshal?" she called out, her voice hoarse and shaky. There was a pause. Then the man said, "I'm going to set my badge on the floor where you can see it through the cracks. Hold on." She heard him move closer, heard something metallic clink against wood. A moment later she could see it, a silver star with Deputy U.S. Marshal engraved on it, catching the light that filtered through the floorboards. It looked genuine, but Katherine had never seen a marshal's badge up close before. "Your brother Samuel is 24 years old," Wesley continued. "He works as a clerk at the land office. He was on that stagecoach because he was coming back from surveying some property near Fredericksburg. He saw the whole robbery, including when Jack Riley shot the driver in cold blood. Samuel described you as stubborn, kind, and liable to hide rather than run because you would not want to leave your animals unprotected. Was he right about that?" Tears stung Katherine's eyes. That sounded exactly like something Samuel would say. "He was right," she whispered. "Then come out, Miss Jenkins. Whoever you're after is gone." Katherine took a shaky breath and began to maneuver herself toward the opening. Her dress caught on something, and she had to tug it free, hearing fabric tear. Her hands were filthy, her hair had come loose from its pins, and she was certain she looked like she had been dragged through the dirt backwards. When she finally emerged through the loose floorboard, she had to blink against the sudden brightness. The man standing a respectful distance away was tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that needed a trim and eyes the color of strong coffee. He wore dusty travel clothes, a gun belt slung low on his hips, and his right hand was bleeding from what looked like a graze across the knuckles. He did not move toward her, just stood there watching her with an expression of relief and concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Katherine shook her head, not trusting her voice. Now that the immediate danger was past, the reality of what had almost happened was crashing over her in waves. She started to stand, but her legs buckled, and suddenly Wesley was there, catching her arm to steady her. "Easy," he said gently. "You've had a hell of a scare. Let's get you sitting down somewhere that is not covered in broken dishes." He helped her outside onto the porch, where the afternoon sun was slanting golden across the yard. Katherine sank onto the bench her father had built years ago and finally allowed herself to look around. There were 3 bodies lying in the yard, and several more horses than she remembered the gang arriving with were tied to the fence. "I had help," Wesley explained, following her gaze. "2 other deputies were with me, but they're chasing down the ones who got away. We got 3 of them, including Jack Riley himself. He would not be terrorizing anyone anymore." "Is he dead?" Katherine asked. "Yes, madam, he drew on us. Did not leave us much choice." Katherine nodded slowly. She knew she should feel something about that, guilt or horror or satisfaction, but mostly she just felt numb. "What happens now?" "Now I need to ask you some questions about what happened here today, and then I need to make sure you're somewhere safe until your brother gets back. Do you have any family nearby, friends who could take you in for a few days?" "My parents are dead. Samuel is all I have." Katherine looked at her hands, which were still trembling. "I have friends in town, but I do not want to put them in danger, if there are still members of the gang out there. The ones who ran are not likely to come back, not after today, but you're right to be cautious." Wesley was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I've been staying at the boarding house in town. Mrs. Henderson runs it. She's tough as boot leather and keeps a shotgun behind the front desk. You would be safe there until Samuel returns." Katherine looked up at him. In the sunlight, she could see that his face was sunburned and lined with exhaustion. He had dark circles under his eyes, and there was a weariness about him that spoke of too many long days in the saddle. "Why did you come?" she asked. I know you were tracking the gang, but you could have just waited for them to leave. You put yourself in danger for someone you do not even know." Wesley met her eyes, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "Because that is the job," he said simply. "And because nobody deserves to live in fear of men like Jack Riley. Your brother was brave to testify. The least I could do was make sure his sister stayed alive while he did it." Katherine felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. This man had risked his life for her, and he spoke about it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you," she said softly. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not arrived when you did." "You were doing pretty well on your own," Wesley said, and there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "That was quick thinking, hiding under the floor. Most people would have panicked and run. My father built that crawlspace when I was a child. He said every house should have a place where someone could hide if raiders came through. I used to play down there when I was little, pretending I was a rabbit in a burrow." Katherine looked back at the house, at the broken window and the door hanging crooked on its hinges. "I suppose I need to clean up this mess." "Not today," Wesley said firmly. "Today you need to get away from here and let yourself recover. I will help you pack some things, and then we are going into town. Tomorrow, when you have had some rest, we can come back and assess the damage. I will help you board up the window and fix what can be fixed. You do not have to do that, I know, but I am going to anyway." There was something about the calm certainty in his voice that made Katherine want to cry. She had been so alone since her parents died, trying to manage everything by herself while Samuel worked long hours to keep food on the table. Having someone simply take charge, someone who clearly knew what he was doing and was not going to take no for an answer, was more of a relief than she could put into words. She let Wesley help her gather some clothes and personal items, trying not to look too closely at the destruction the gang had wrought inside her home. Her mother's china was indeed shattered, and the curtains had been torn down. The mattresses had been slashed open, likely in search of hidden money or evidence. It made her sick to see the casual violence of it, the way they had destroyed things simply because they could. Wesley seemed to sense her distress. "I know it looks bad now," he said as he helped her pack a carpet bag, "but most of this can be fixed or replaced. The important thing is that you are alive and unharmed. Everything else is just things." "Those things were my mother's," Katherine said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "They're all I have left of her." Wesley paused in the act of folding one of her dresses. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "Truly. Men like the Riley gang never think about what they are really taking from people. They just see targets and obstacles." Katherine wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "You sound like you have seen a lot of this." "Too much. I have been a deputy marshal for 3 years now. Before that, I was a Texas Ranger for 2 years. I have seen what outlaws do to innocent people, and it never gets easier." He handed her the folded dress. "But I have also seen people rebuild. I have seen families come back from worse than this. You are stronger than you think, Miss Jenkins." They finished packing in silence, and then Wesley went to saddle her horse while Katherine locked up the house as best she could with the damaged door. She stood for a moment on the porch, looking at the place where she had lived her entire life. It felt violated now, unsafe, and she wondered if she would ever be able to sleep easily here again. Wesley rode up leading her mare, a pretty sorrel named Copper that Katherine's father had given her for her 16th birthday. "Ready?" he asked. Katherine nodded and let him help her mount. His hands were gentle but firm, and she noticed again the bullet graze across his knuckles. "You should have that looked at," she said, gesturing to his hand. He glanced down as if he had forgotten about the injury. "It is nothing. I have had worse from shaving. It could get infected. Then I will have Mrs. Henderson fuss over it when we get to town. She enjoys having someone to mother." Wesley swung up onto his own horse, a big buckskin gelding that looked like it could run all day. "Come on. We should arrive before dark." The ride into Johnson City took about 45 minutes. Wesley kept a steady pace, not too fast but not dawdling either, and he kept watching their surroundings with the alert awareness of a man who had learned not to take safety for granted. Katherine found herself studying him when she thought he was not looking. There was something solid and dependable about him, a quiet strength that was different from the blustering confidence of many of the men she knew in town. "How long have you been tracking the Riley gang?" she asked, partly to distract herself from replaying the afternoon's terror in her mind. "Since they robbed a bank in Austin back in March. They killed a teller during that robbery, a young man with a wife and baby. That made it personal for a lot of us." Wesley shifted in his saddle. "They have been moving through central Texas like a plague, hitting stage coaches, small banks, even a few ranches. Your brother's testimony is going to help us make sure the ones we catch hang for what they have done. Will you have to go back to Austin soon?" "Probably. I need to file reports on what happened today, and I need to coordinate with the other deputies about tracking down the remaining gang members. But that can wait a few days." He glanced at her. "I want to make sure you are settled and safe first. You really do not have to worry about me. I have been taking care of myself for months now. I know you have, but that does not mean you have to keep doing it alone." There was something in the way he said it that made Katherine's chest feel tight. She barely knew this man, and yet he had already shown her more consideration and kindness than most of the people she saw every Sunday at church. Those people had offered polite condolences when her parents died, but none of them had actually stepped forward to help. She and Samuel had managed on their own, proud and stubborn and determined not to be objects of pity. Johnson City appeared on the horizon as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a modest town of perhaps 300 people, built around a central square with the county courthouse at its heart. There were the usual establishments: a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a church, and Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, which was a rambling two-story structure with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. Mrs. Henderson herself came out when she heard the horses, a formidable woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Wesley Parker, is that you? I heard gunfire earlier and feared the worst. We ran into the Riley gang at the Jenkins place," Wesley said, dismounting. "This is Miss Katherine Jenkins. She needs a room for a few days, somewhere safe. Can you accommodate her, Mrs.?" Henderson's expression softened as she looked at Katherine. "Of course, dear. You poor thing, you look like you have been through hell and back. Come inside and I will get you sorted out. Do you need anything? Food, a bath, both?" "Both would be wonderful," Katherine admitted, suddenly aware of how filthy and exhausted she was. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. It is Alice, dear. No need to stand on formality." Alice Henderson ushered her inside with the efficient kindness of a woman who had been caring for travelers her entire adult life. "Wesley, you make sure those horses are seen to, and then you come get that hand cleaned up. I saw you favoring it." Wesley gave Katherine a small smile. Told you she would fuss. Inside, the boarding house was clean and comfortable, with lace curtains and the smell of baking bread. Alice showed Katherine to a small but pleasant room on the second floor with a window overlooking the main street. The washroom is at the end of the hall, she explained. I will have one of my girls draw you a bath. You take your time, and when you are ready, come down to the dining room. I will have supper waiting. Katherine wanted to protest that it was too much trouble, but the truth was she desperately needed to wash away the dirt and fear of the afternoon. Thank you, she said again. I do not know how I will repay your kindness. Nonsense. You have been through an ordeal. This is what neighbors do for each other. Alice patted her arm. Besides, any friend of Wesley's is welcome here. That boy has stayed with me half a dozen times over the past few years, and he is one of the good ones. You are in safe hands. After Alice left, Katherine sank down onto the bed and finally allowed herself to fall apart a little. She cried quietly, releasing the terror and stress of the day, and then she pulled herself together and went to take the promised bath. The hot water was heaven, washing away the grime and some of the tension in her muscles. She scrubbed her hair twice and then sat in the tub until the water began to cool, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. A few hours ago, she had been preparing supper in her own home, safe and content. Now her house was wrecked, dangerous men had tried to kill her, and she was under the protection of a federal marshal she had just met. It felt surreal, like something out of one of the dime novels Samuel sometimes brought home from town. But Wesley Parker was very real, and he had saved her life. She found herself thinking about the calm steadiness in his voice, the careful way he had helped her up from the crawlspace, the matter-of-fact kindness he showed without expecting anything in return. She wondered what his story was, what had led him to become a lawman, whether he had family waiting for him somewhere. When she finally emerged from the washroom, dressed in a clean skirt and shirtwaist, she felt marginally more human. She found her way downstairs to the dining room where several other boarders were already eating. Wesley was sitting at a corner table, his hand now properly bandaged, and he stood when he saw her. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." Katherine took the seat he held out for her. "Did Alice take care of your hand?" "She did. You were right about it needing attention. It was deeper than I thought." He flexed his fingers experimentally. "Should be fine in a few days." Alice appeared with plates of beef stew and fresh bread, along with coffee so strong Katherine could probably have used it to strip paint. "Eat," Alice commanded. "Both of you look half-starved." The food was delicious, and Katherine realized she had not eaten since breakfast. She and Wesley ate in comfortable silence for a while, both too hungry and tired for much conversation. The other boarders glanced at them occasionally with curiosity, but were polite enough not to intrude. "I sent word to San Antonio," Wesley said eventually. "Your brother should get the message by tomorrow. I expect he will want to come back as soon as possible, but I advised him to wait until after the trial. He is safer where he is. How long will the trial take? Hard to say. Could be a few days, could be a couple of weeks. Depends on how many witnesses they have lined up and how much the defense tries to drag things out." Wesley took a sip of his coffee. "In the meantime, you are welcome to stay here or go back to your ranch. I would recommend staying in town for now, just to be safe." "I cannot just abandon the animals. Someone needs to feed the chickens and milk the cow." "I will take care of it," Wesley said. "I am already planning to ride out there tomorrow to deal with the bodies and secure the property. I can handle the livestock while I am at it." Katherine wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could take care of her own responsibilities, but the truth was she felt utterly drained. The thought of going back to that house, of seeing the blood in the yard and the destruction inside, made her stomach twist. Are you sure? I am sure. You need rest, Miss Jenkins. Let me do this. If we are going to be spending time together, you should probably call me Katherine. Wesley's expression softened slightly. Then you should call me Wesley, or Wes if you prefer. Wesley suits you better, I think. Most people agree with you. My mother was the only one who called me Wes. There was a flicker of something sad in his eyes, but it passed quickly. She died when I was 15, cholera. I am sorry. I lost both my parents last winter to pneumonia. It is hard, losing the people who raised you. It is. But you carry them with you, in the things they taught you and the memories you have. That never goes away. Wesley finished his coffee. What about you? What did your parents teach you? Katherine thought about it. My father taught me to be strong and independent. He believed women should know how to shoot, ride, and manage a ranch just as well as any man. My mother taught me to be kind but not foolish, to stand up for what is right even when it is difficult. She smiled slightly. She also taught me to make the best apple pie in Johnson City, though I have not had much occasion to bake lately. That is a useful skill. I have been living on trail rations and boarding house food for years. I cannot remember the last time I had a proper home-cooked meal. If you help me get my house back in order, maybe I will bake you one as a thank you. I would like that. They talked for a while longer, swapping stories about their childhoods and their families. Katherine learned that Wesley had grown up in Austin, the son of a schoolteacher mother and a carpenter father, who had died in a construction accident when Wesley was 12. He had worked odd jobs to help support his mother until she died, and then he had drifted for a while before joining the Texas Rangers. He spoke about his work with a mixture of pride and weariness, clearly dedicated to bringing justice to the frontier, but equally clearly exhausted by the toll it took. You ever think about doing something else? Katherine asked. Something less dangerous? Wesley considered the question. Sometimes. But then I think about people like you and your brother, good people just trying to live their lives, and I remember why I do this. Someone has to stand between the innocent and the outlaws. If not me, then who? That is very noble. But it must be lonely, always moving from place to place, never having a home. It is, he admitted. But it is the life I chose, or maybe it chose me. Either way, it is what I am good at. Katherine wanted to tell him that he seemed like he would be good at a lot of things, that there was a gentleness and intelligence about him that suggested he was capable of far more than just tracking down criminals. But she held her tongue. They had only just met, after all, and she had no right to make judgments about his life choices. After supper, Wesley walked her up to her room, checking the lock on the door and the window to make sure everything was secure. I am right down the hall if you need anything, he said. Do not hesitate to call out if you hear anything that worries you. I am a light sleeper. I will thank you, Wesley, for everything. He tipped his head slightly, a gesture that was almost courtly. Sleep well, Katherine. Tomorrow will be better. But sleep did not come easily. Katherine lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, and every time she closed her eyes she saw the barrel of a gun or heard heavy footsteps above her hiding place. She drifted in and out of an uneasy doze, startling awake at every creak of the old house settling. Sometime around midnight she heard a soft knock on her door. Katherine, are you all right? I heard you cry out. She got up and opened the door a crack. Wesley was standing in the hallway in his shirt sleeves, his hair mussed from sleep, concern etched on his face. I am sorry, she whispered. Did I wake you? I told you I am a light sleeper. Are you having nightmares? Katherine nodded, feeling foolish. I cannot stop thinking about today. Every time I close my eyes, I am back under those floorboards. Wesley was quiet for a moment. Then he said, would it help if I sat with you for a while, just until you fall asleep? I promise I will be a perfect gentleman. Katherine knew she should say no. It was not proper having a man in her room, even a man who had saved her life. But the truth was she did not want to be alone, did not want to face those nightmares without someone nearby. "Yes," she said softly. "That would help." Wesley brought a chair from his own room and positioned it beside her door, angled so he could see out into the hallway. "Go ahead and lie down," he said. "I will keep watch. Nothing is going to hurt you tonight." Katherine climbed back into bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin. Knowing Wesley was there, solid and vigilant, made all the difference. Her eyes grew heavy, and this time when sleep came, it was deep and dreamless. When she woke in the morning, pale sunlight was streaming through the window and Wesley was gone. But there was a note on the chair he had occupied. "Gone to your ranch to take care of things. We'll be back this afternoon. Stay safe, Wesley." Katherine got up and dressed, feeling more rested than she had expected. She went downstairs to find Alice serving breakfast to the other boarders, and the older woman immediately beckoned her over. "How are you feeling this morning, dear?" "Better, thank you." "Is Wesley gone?" "Left at first light. That boy never stops moving. Reminds me of my late husband, always thinking he had to solve everyone's problems personally." Alice poured Katherine a cup of coffee. "He cares about people, that one, more than is probably healthy for a man in his line of work." Katherine accepted the coffee gratefully. "He sat outside my room last night because I was having nightmares. I barely know him, and yet he has been kinder to me than people I have known my whole life. That is because Wesley Parker is a good man. Rare as hen's teeth these days, but they do exist." Alice sat down across from her. "I have known him for 3 years now, ever since he first started working as a deputy marshal. He always treats people with respect, even the ones he arrests. And he has never once failed to pay his bill on time or clean up after himself. That tells you a lot about a person's character. Does he have anyone? A sweetheart, I mean?" Alice gave her a knowing look. "Not that I have ever heard. I think he has been too busy chasing outlaws to think much about romance, but that does not mean he is not capable of it. He just needs the right reason to slow down." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "I was just curious." "Of course you were, dear, and there is nothing wrong with that. A handsome young man saves your life. It is only natural to wonder about him." Alice patted her hand. "Just take things slow. You have both been through a lot." Katherine spent the morning helping Alice around the boarding house, grateful for the distraction. She mended linens, helped prepare lunch, and swept the front porch, keeping herself busy so she would not think too much about what Wesley might be finding at her ranch. But as the afternoon wore on, she found herself watching the road, waiting for his return. He finally rode in around 3 o'clock, looking dusty and tired. Katherine met him on the porch, searching his face for clues about what he had found. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Not as bad as it could be. I boarded up the broken window and straightened up inside as best I could. The furniture can mostly be salvaged, and I gathered up the pieces of your mother's china. Some of it might be able to be glued back together." He dismounted and tied his horse to the rail. "The bodies are gone. Sheriff Hawkins helped me transport them to the undertaker. And your livestock are all fed and watered. That cow of yours is particularly opinionated about her schedule." Despite everything, Katherine felt a smile tug at her lips. "That is Buttercup. She has always been temperamental. My father used to say she was half cow, half schoolmarm." "That is an apt description." Wesley pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "I also did a thorough check of the property. No signs that anyone came back during the night. I think you are safe to return home whenever you are ready." "Thank you, Wesley. I know this was not part of your job, maybe not officially, but it is the right thing to do." He hesitated, then added, "I have to leave tomorrow morning. There is a meeting in Austin I cannot miss regarding the trial, but I should be back in a few days, a week at most. Will you be all right here until then? Katherine felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She had known he could not stay forever, that he had responsibilities elsewhere, but somehow she had hoped for more time. I will be fine. Alice has been very kind, and I have friends in town I can call on if needed. Good. And I will send word as soon as I know when your brother can come home. Wesley looked like he wanted to say something else, but he stopped himself. I should go write my reports. I will see you at supper. Yes. I will be there. That evening, their last meal together before he left, felt bittersweet. They talked about practical things, about the repairs still needed at the ranch and the timeline for the trial, but underneath it all was a current of something unspoken. Katherine found herself memorizing details about him. The way he listened with his full attention, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he almost smiled. When it was time to say good night, Wesley walked her upstairs again. At her door, he paused. Katherine, I want you to know that meeting you has been. He stopped, searching for words. It has reminded me that there are good things in this world worth protecting, worth fighting for, so thank you for that. I should be thanking you. You saved my life. You saved your own life by being smart and brave. I just provided backup. He reached out as if to touch her hand, then seemed to think better of it and let his arm fall. Take care of yourself. I will be back as soon as I can. I will. You take care too, and Wesley. When you come back, I will have that apple pie ready. He did smile then, a real one that transformed his whole face. I am going to hold you to that. The next morning, Katherine woke to find he had already gone. She tried to tell herself it was foolish to feel so bereft over the departure of a man she had known for less than 2 days, but her heart did not seem to care about logic. She threw herself into activity, helping Alice and making plans to return to her ranch. Several women from church visited, offering belated assistance now that the immediate danger had passed, and Katherine accepted their help with as much grace as she could muster. 3 days after Wesley left, she moved back home. The house still bore scars from the Riley gang's invasion, but it was livable. Katherine spent her days cleaning and repairing, trying to restore order to the chaos. At night, she read her father's books by lamplight and tried not to think about a certain dark-haired deputy marshal riding the road somewhere between Johnson City and Austin. A week passed. Then another. Katherine received a brief letter from Samuel saying he was well and the trial was proceeding. He made no mention of when he might return. She wrote back with careful omissions, telling him about the minor damage to the house, but not the full terror of that afternoon. There would be time enough for those explanations when he came home. She also received a letter from Wesley, a short note that arrived via the weekly mail coach. Katherine, it read, the trial is taking longer than expected. The defense is being difficult. I hope you are well and that your brother will be home soon. I have not forgotten about the pie. Yours, Wesley. She read that letter so many times she practically memorized it, searching for hidden meanings in every word. The fact that he had taken time to write it all, given how busy he must be, felt significant. Or maybe she was just being foolish, seeing romance where there was only kindness. It was 3 weeks after the attack when Wesley finally returned. Katherine was in her garden, pulling weeds and trying to coax her vegetables back to life after their neglect, when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and her heart leapt when she recognized the rider. Wesley looked thinner than she remembered, more worn, as if the past weeks had taken their toll. But his face lit up when he saw her, and he dismounted quickly, leaving his horse to stand ground-tied. Katherine, it is good to see you. Wesley. She stood up, suddenly aware of how she must look with dirt on her skirt and her hair falling out of its braid. "I did not know you were coming back today. The trial ended yesterday. Jack Riley's surviving gang members were convicted and sentenced to hang. Your brother's testimony was crucial." Wesley took a step closer. "Samuel is on his way home. He should arrive tomorrow morning on the stage." "That is wonderful news." Katherine felt relief wash through her. Samuel was safe, the gang was dealt with, and everything could finally return to normal. Except she was not sure what normal was anymore, or if she even wanted it. "There is something else I need to tell you," Wesley said, and there was something in his tone that made her pulse quicken. "I requested a transfer." "A transfer? What does that mean?" "It means I asked to be reassigned to this district. Johnson City and the surrounding area now fall under my jurisdiction. I will be based here instead of Austin." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know my job is dangerous and unpredictable. But these past 3 weeks, all I could think about was getting back here, getting back to you." Katherine's breath caught. "Wesley, I am not good at this," he continued. "I have spent the past 7 years focused on my work, on being a good lawman, and I have not let myself think about having a personal life. But then I met you, and everything changed. You are smart and strong and brave, and you make me want things I thought I had given up on. Things like a home and a future and someone to come back to at the end of the day." He looked at her with such open honesty that it made her chest ache. "I am not asking for any promises. I just wanted you to know how I feel. And if there is any chance you might feel the same way, I would like the opportunity to court you properly." Katherine felt like her heart might burst. "You transferred here for me." "I transferred here for a lot of reasons. This district needs a full-time marshal. The local sheriff is getting too old to handle everything on his own, and there have been reports of rustlers in the area that need investigating." He smiled slightly. "But yes, the main reason was you. I could not leave without knowing if there might be something between us worth exploring." She closed the distance between them in 3 quick steps and took his hands in hers, dirt and all. "There is definitely something worth exploring. I have been thinking about you constantly since you left. I kept telling myself I was being silly, that you were just doing your job and I was reading too much into your kindness, but I could not help hoping." Wesley's expression transformed with relief and joy. "So I can court you. You will give me that chance?" "Yes, absolutely yes." He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her in a hug that was equal parts relief and celebration. Katherine rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady thrum of his heartbeat, and felt something inside her settle into place. This was right. This was real. When they finally pulled apart, both were grinning foolishly. "I suppose I should bake that pie now," Katherine said. "I suppose you should. Though fair warning, after 3 weeks of anticipation, it has a lot to live up to. I think I can manage. Come inside, I will put coffee on." They spent the rest of the afternoon together, talking and laughing with the easy comfort of people who had already weathered a crisis together. Wesley told her about the trial, about Samuel's courage on the witness stand, and the looks on the defendants' faces when the verdicts were read. Katherine told him about the past 3 weeks, about the repairs she had made and the garden she was trying to salvage. As promised, she made the pie, and Wesley pronounced it the best he had ever tasted. They ate dinner together at her small kitchen table, and when it was time for him to leave, he took her hand and kissed it gently. "May I come calling tomorrow, after your brother arrives? Please do. I want you to meet Samuel properly, and I think he will want to thank you in person." "I look forward to it." Wesley mounted his horse, then looked down at her with an expression so tender it made her knees weak. "Sleep well, Katherine. I will see you tomorrow." Samuel's homecoming the next day was emotional and overwhelming. He swept Katherine into a fierce hug, apologizing for leaving her alone and putting her in danger. When Wesley arrived that afternoon, Samuel shook his hand with genuine gratitude, thanking him for protecting his sister when he could not. "She protected herself," Wesley said. "I just helped clean up afterward." The three of them sat on the porch, and Katherine finally told Samuel the full story of what had happened that day. Her brother's face went white as he listened, and his hands clenched into fists when she described hiding under the floorboards. But he listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I am so sorry," he said finally. "This is my fault. If I had not testified, then the Riley gang would still be terrorizing innocent people," Wesley interrupted. "You did the right thing, Samuel. What happened to Katherine was not your fault. It was the fault of criminals who chose violence over decency." "He is right," Katherine added. "I am proud of you for being brave enough to testify, and everything turned out all right in the end." Samuel looked between them, noticing the way Katherine and Wesley were sitting closer than strictly necessary, the way their eyes met and held. "Is there something I should know about you too?" Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "Wesley has asked to court me," I said yes. Her brother's eyebrows rose. "That was fast." "I know it might seem that way," Wesley said carefully, "and if you have objections, I will respect them. You are Katherine's family and your opinion matters." Samuel studied Wesley for a long moment, his expression serious. Then he smiled. "I watched you testify at that trial. I heard what you and the other marshals did to bring the Riley gang to justice. And most importantly, you saved my sister's life. If Katherine wants to be courted by you, then you have my blessing. Just know that if you hurt her, federal marshal or not, you will have me to answer to." Wesley extended his hand. "That is fair. I promise I will treat her with the respect and care she deserves." They shook on it, and Katherine felt something tight in her chest finally relax. She had her brother home safe. She had Wesley by her side. And for the first time in months, she felt like her life might actually return to some semblance of normalcy. But normal, it turned out, was relative. Wesley's work as a marshal kept him busy, often calling him away for days at a time to investigate crimes or transport prisoners. But whenever he was in Johnson City, he came to call on Katherine, bringing her books from Austin or wildflowers he had picked on the trail. They took long rides across the countryside, talking about everything and nothing. He taught her to shoot more accurately than her father ever had, and she taught him to appreciate the small pleasures of domestic life. A well-tended garden, fresh baked bread, the satisfaction of watching something grow. Their courtship proceeded slowly by necessity, but steadily. Wesley was unfailingly respectful, always mindful of propriety and Katherine's reputation. But there were moments, private moments when Samuel was away or they were alone on a ride, when the attraction between them sparked into something more urgent. A touch that lingered too long. A look that promised more than words could say. A kiss, finally, on a warm evening in August when the cicadas sang and the stars wheeled overhead. That kiss changed things. It was gentle at first, exploratory, but it quickly deepened into something that left them both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Wesley rested his forehead against hers, his hands cupping her face. "I love you," he whispered. "I have loved you since the first moment I saw you emerging from under those floorboards, covered in dust and braver than anyone I had ever met." "I love you too," Katherine replied, and it was the truth. Somewhere between his arrival that terrifying afternoon and now, he had become the center of her world. She could not imagine her future without him in it. "Marry me," Wesley said. "I know I do not have much to offer." My job is dangerous and I am away more than I am home, but I promise I will spend every day trying to make you happy. I will build you a good life, Katherine, I swear it." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They told Samuel that evening, and he took the news with good grace, even though it meant Katherine would eventually leave the ranch. "You deserve to be happy," he told his sister. "And Wesley is a good man. I could not ask for a better brother-in-law." They were married in September, in the small church in Johnson City, with half the town in attendance. Alice Henderson cried through the entire ceremony, and the local sheriff gave Wesley a hard time about getting domesticated. Katherine wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit, and Wesley wore a new suit that he complained was far too stiff and formal. But when he looked at her coming down the aisle, his expression made every hardship of the past months worthwhile. They moved into a small house on the edge of town that Wesley purchased with his savings. It needed work, but it had good bones and a large yard where Katherine could plant a garden. Samuel came to visit often, and gradually he began courting Sarah Miller, the banker's daughter, which meant Katherine did not have to worry about him being alone on the ranch. Wesley's work continued to take him away, but he always came home. And slowly, Katherine learned to live with the fear that came with loving a lawman. She learned to watch the road and trust that he would return to her. And he always did, sometimes battered and exhausted, but always alive and always glad to be home. Their first child, a son they named William after Wesley's father, was born the following summer. Wesley was away on assignment when Katherine went into labor, and she had to endure it with only Alice and the doctor in attendance. But Wesley rode in 2 days later, having pushed his horse hard to get home, and the look on his face when he held his son for the first time was something Katherine would treasure forever. "He is perfect," Wesley whispered, cradling the tiny bundle with surprising confidence for a new father. "He looks like you. He has your nose," Katherine replied, exhausted but happy, "and probably your stubbornness. Then we are in trouble." Life settled into a new rhythm. Wesley requested lighter duties that kept him closer to home, working more on local investigations and less on the dangerous fugitive chases that had defined his early career. He did not stop being a marshal, could not stop fighting for justice, but he found a better balance. Katherine learned to manage their household, raising William and later their daughter Emma, while still maintaining her independence and the skills her father had taught her. They had hard times. There were months when money was tight, when Wesley's marshal salary barely stretched to cover their needs. There were nights when he came home injured, and Katherine had to clean wounds and pretend she was not terrified of losing him. There were arguments, as all couples have, about his work and her fears and how to raise their children. But through it all, the love between them remained constant. Wesley never stopped looking at Katherine like she was the most precious thing in his world. Katherine never stopped being grateful for the day a cowboy with kind eyes had told her it was safe to come out from under the floorboards. 5 years after their wedding, Wesley finally retired from active duty as a marshal. He had been injured one too many times, and Katherine had put her foot down. He transitioned into working as a trainer and consultant for younger deputies, teaching them the skills he had learned over his years in law enforcement. It was safer work, and it meant he was home every night, which was all Katherine had ever wanted. They grew old together in that little house on the edge of Johnson City. They watched their children grow up and have families of their own. William became a lawyer, using his father's sense of justice in a different arena. Emma married a rancher and moved to New Mexico, but she visited often with her own growing brood. Samuel married Sarah Miller and took over the family ranch, making it prosperous enough to employ several hands. He and Wesley became close friends, spending long evenings on the porch discussing politics and cattle prices, while Katherine and Sarah rolled their eyes and knitted baby blankets for their ever-expanding collection of grandchildren. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Wesley took Katherine back to the ranch where they had met. It had been sold years ago after Samuel moved to his new spread, but the current owners were friends who did not mind them visiting. They stood in the yard where Wesley had first called out to Katherine, telling her it was safe to come out. "You ever think about that day?" Wesley asked, his arm around her waist. He was graying at the temples now, and there were lines around his eyes from too many years squinting into the sun, but to Katherine he was just as handsome as he had been at 25. "All the time," she admitted. "I think about how terrified I was and how close I came to dying. And then I think about how lucky I was that you showed up when you did." "I am the lucky one," Wesley said. "You gave me a reason to stop drifting. You gave me a home and a family and a life I never thought I would have. Everything good in my world started the day I met you." Katherine leaned her head against his shoulder. "We made a good life together, did we not? The best. And it is not over yet. We have a lot of years left in us." They did. They had years of watching their grandchildren grow, of quiet mornings and comfortable silences. They had years of holding hands and sharing stories, and growing old side by side. And when Wesley finally passed away at the age of 73, after a life well lived and a love story for the ages, Katherine grieved but did not despair. She knew she had been blessed with something rare and precious, a true partnership, born from danger and fear but forged into something beautiful and lasting. She lived another 6 years without him, surrounded by children and grandchildren who adored her. And when she died peacefully in her sleep at 79, her last thoughts were of a young deputy marshal with kind eyes, telling a frightened woman hiding under the floorboards that she was safe now, that whoever she was afraid of was gone. In the end, that was what their love had been, a place of safety in a dangerous world, a refuge they had built together one day at a time. It was a story of courage and kindness, of two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and chosen to build something lasting from it. It was a testament to the idea that even in the harsh landscape of the Wild West, where violence and uncertainty ruled, love could still flourish and endure. Their graves stood side by side in the Johnson City Cemetery, beneath a large oak tree that provided shade in the summer. The headstones were simple but elegant, marking the resting places of Wesley Parker and Katherine Jenkins Parker, beloved parents and grandparents, pillars of their community, and proof that true love, once found, never really dies. Years later, their great-great-granddaughter would find an old letter tucked into a family Bible. It was from Wesley to Katherine, written during one of his long absences in the early days of their marriage. The paper was yellowed and fragile, but the words were still clear. "My dearest Katherine, I am writing this from a camp somewhere north of Dallas, too far from you and counting the days until I can come home. The other men are sleeping, but I cannot rest without telling you what is in my heart. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You took a man who had nothing but his badge and his duty, and you showed him what it means to truly live. I promise you, when this assignment is over, I am coming home to you, and I am never leaving your side again for longer than necessary. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Yours always and forever, Wesley." That great-great-granddaughter would read those words and smile, understanding finally the depth of devotion that had been passed down through her family. She would learn the story of how her ancestors met, of the cowboy who saved a woman hiding in fear, and how that moment of courage and kindness had rippled forward through generations. It was a love story as old as time, but as unique as the individuals who lived it. It was a testament to the power of finding your person, your partner, the one who makes you brave enough to come out from hiding and face the world. And it all started with a simple phrase spoken with confidence and compassion in the Texas afternoon. "Come out. Whoever you are after is gone." Katherine had come out that day, stepping from darkness into light, from fear into safety, from loneliness into love. And in doing so, she had found not just her rescue but her future, her purpose, and the man who would stand beside her through every trial and triumph that life brought their way. It was the kind of love that songs were written about, the kind that made people believe in destiny and second chances, and the idea that sometimes, in our darkest moments, exactly the right person appears to show us the way forward. Their story became legend in Johnson City, told and retold until the details blurred into myth. But the heart of it remained true. Two people, brought together by circumstances neither would have chosen, who made the choice every single day to build something beautiful together. They had started with nothing but fear and hope, and they had created a legacy of love that would outlast them both, inspiring generations to come to believe in the power of courage, commitment, and the kind of love that transforms ordinary people into heroes of their own stories. And so the tale of Katherine Jenkins and Wesley Parker lived on, a reminder that even in the wildest of places, in the hardest of times, love could not only survive but thrive, given the right hearts and the willingness to take a chance on something terrifying and wonderful and absolutely worth the risk. They had taken that chance, and it had made all the difference.